Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Hutchinson City Council meeting for Tuesday, March 27th, 2018. Approve the council agenda and any agenda additions or corrections.
Mayor, Council, I don't have any additions or corrections at this time.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
A second.
Motion by Mary, second by Steve to approve the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. We have no pastor here tonight, so let's go to Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Recognition of gifts, donations, and community service to the city. Does anybody have anything?
I'm not sure. Sorry.
Steve has something?
No.
Oh, okay.
He said no.
I was just thinking about the firemen last night, getting the work done. Have any information on that?
Oh, the fire they had last
Yeah.
night, or yesterday afternoon, they had a fire on,
Jefferson
Street, right?
Right next to my house.
right?
Yeah, kind of suspicious there, John, too.
I had shoveled out the fire hydrant this winter, and that's the first time in my 30 years in town I've ever seen that fire hydrant get used.
Well, thank you for shoveling it out.
Yeah.
Just never know.
They, evidently, the structure's still standing, so
I'm pretty sure it's totaled.
yeah,
So,
well,
That's an old building.
it's
it's
old
the old
building.
Hudson garage.
Yeah,
It's the old Anderson garage.
Just always appreciate the effort of our emergency service personnel. So
yes, definitely.
Thanks.
Citizens addressing the council. And it says, all right, approval of minutes. We have regular meeting minutes of March 13th, 2018.
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Motion by John, second by Steve to approve the minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Consent agenda, these will be done with one motion unless somebody pulls something off for discussion. A is consideration for approval of the 44th Annual Arts and Crafts Festival to be held September 14th, 15th, 2018 in Library Square. B is consideration for approval of Dairy Day celebration on June 1st, 2018. C is consideration for approval of resolution number 14869, resolution approving disposal of informational technology department surplus property phones. D is consideration for approval of resolution number 14872, resolution approving a preliminary and final plat and vacation of easements for Garber addition to Fairway Estates located at 1424 and 1428 Heritage Avenue Northwest with favorable Planning Commission recommendation. E is consideration for approval of short-term gambling license to the Saturday night cruisers from June through December of 2018 at the Hutchinson Mall. F is claims and appropriation and contract payments, register A. Anything anybody wants pulled off?
Just had a quick question on D, please.
All right. Motion to approve the balance.
Make that a motion.
I'll second.
Motion been made and second to approve the balance. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
D, Steve?
Yeah, I guess when I read it, you know, it just kind of the history that Dan put in there about, you know, where the lot coverage and the shoreland district comes into play, and then looking at the development that's taken place out there already, and, you know, how that really hasn't been followed real closely, and I kind of wonder about even some of the more recent properties. So I was just curious, you know, are the Garbers here?
Yes.
I just had a quick question, you know, and maybe you could address it then. Was combining the lots the reason for that because of the lot coverage restrictions, or did you just want a larger lot to begin with?
Could
If
you,
you could
could
come-
you come up?
Yeah.
Thanks, Steve. Could you come up, please, and state your name and address for me,
Just for the record.
for the record?
See, that's why I told you you should come to.
Lynn Garbers,
Mark Harbers.
Your address, please.
20225 Jubilee Drive, Silver Lake, Minnesota.
Thank you.
The issue with the lots is they were so narrow,
Yeah.
going straight back, that it just wasn't, and plus on the one lot, there's a fire hydrant right in front, so you'd have to remove that, and it'd be very expensive
Okay.
to use to put a driveway in there or anything like that. We didn't want a deep lot, we wanted kind of a wraparound lot.
Sure. Okay, so something a little larger was the intent?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that helps because, again, I was just wondering from the shoreland, are restrictions on lot size because of that? If
For
that
lot
come-
coverage.
For lot coverage, the amount of house impervious surfaces that can be added. Again, there's other lots out there, single lots, that might have some of those same issues, and that's where I wanted to ask about opportunities, you know, what we might be able to do to help facilitate those when requests come forward. But you answered my question, and that's
Okay.
helpful then. Thank you.
Thank you.
So again, when I looked at this, you know, these two lots are smaller, as Garber's mentioned, kind of narrow, or have some shape to it. But then there's some other ones out there as well like that, and might have some of those same issues with lot coverage, with the shoreland district. And I know Dan's following the rules, which is great, but just wondering from the council standpoint, if requests come forward, if there's opportunities to maybe look at variances as part of the process too, that might facilitate if somebody's having some issues trying to fit a home on one of those lots. There aren't many left. When I went out there, there's only like 7, maybe 9, I couldn't tell one of them for sure if that's a available lot or not.
Sure.
But, so out of 57, so it's like 85% full, and the rest of the that are available are single lots. So again, as far as requests, would that be helpful from your end? You know, if
Yeah, I
you
think we've
see
been
how
able
it works.
to manage it relatively well. Staff has used a little bit of discretion on some of the impervious coverage that's close to the 25. There was one that just went in. That's about 28% coverage, and it's much less than historically had been permitted out there. Some of those are up to 50%, and the shoreline ordinance has a cap of the 25. But overall, obviously, the variance is always a tool that we have to utilize if necessary, and we keep that in mind. So,
Well, the other thing that was unique or different with these lots is you have the stormwater pond right behind it too, and again, maybe there's some question if it's retention or detention, but you'd hope that that could be utilized to help with that lot coverage piece too. Anyway, I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll
I'll second that. Mary Kim?
Doesn't matter.
Motion by Steve, second by Mary to approve. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. We have claims and appropriation contract payment, Register B. Chad, I see that you have a check there, so.
I do, so I will abstain.
All righty.
Motion to approve.
I'll second it. Motion by John, second by myself to approve. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That's with Chad abstaining. All right, well, can't how long, or no, it's Public Works.
Yeah, it's kind of-
Well, John's late, you know, I don't want Kent to get up if he don't have to, but.
Do it from right here, so
Okay, that's fine.
we'll keep it brief.
Okay,
I know you guys
Gonna keep it.
we do have a
bigger
public hearing.
things
Yeah.
this evening.
Well, you got it to us just in time. I had a chance to read it.
There you go, so we're
It
covered.
took a while.
There we go. All right, yeah, good evening, first and foremost, Mayor and Council. Our annual report, which, similar format here as previous years, we use this as more of a, you know, a data collection, record-keeping mechanism more than anything, so it's maybe somewhat selfishly, it's for staff, for our public works management and the likes first and foremost. Obviously, there's a lot of information here. I'm just going to go through the first, I think it's 19 slides, give or take, which is kind of the overarching public works group information. It touches a little bit on goals, objectives, accomplishments from 2017 here. And then after that, it's a lot of current inventory information, staffing, work hours, and then the back end of the document that was passed out this evening, and also like John mentioned, sent out earlier this afternoon, is our water wastewater annual report, which has all sorts of information if you're interested. So, you know, everything's here. We tried to make this as comprehensive as possible. So with that, I will roll through a few slides. Feel free to interrupt. John and Tim are also in the audience here this evening, so if you have any questions, let me know. Organization, not a whole lot's changed on this front over the last few years, other than, you know, we're a few years into Eric Levine being our water supervisor and Tim Gratke being our wastewater supervisor. Things are going very well on that front. We're lucky to have both Eric and Tim in our organization. I think, you know, unfortunately, when we lost Brian Mayer, we were scratching our heads a little bit, honestly, and how we're going to manage our water and wastewater groups, and I think we've gotten dang lucky with the people we have involved. Staffs, a little bit of movement here. We have a few of them in bold that have new employees, or we've reshuffled the deck a little bit. Operations and maintenance, we had two longtime employees retire last year, Dick Ebert and Dave Telecki. We did move one person from our wastewater group, Corey Franick, into a senior public works maintenance operator position. In essence, basically the Dick Ebert position. Then the open position, we hired Mitchell Thompson, and he came to us with a little bit of a county experience, McLeod County experience, so we're fortunate on that front. And then moving down to wastewater, we actually finally filled the Troy's Willing position, the lab position, and then we also filled the position Corey Franick moved out of. And so what we did was we took Deb Paulson into our lab tech / wastewater operator position, basically Troy's former position, and then we hired Matthew Keller, recent tech school graduate, so out of St. Cloud. So we're fortunate there to get him out of that program. And then John Kent came to us with some mechanical experience, basically to be our second mechanic, junior mechanic, I guess, on the water wastewater front, working with Eric Moore.
So are you fully staffed now?
We are fully, well, with the exception being we do have an operator position, a new operator position in the streets department. That was part of the budget this year.
That still has to get filled?
Yep.
yeah.
Kent with Dick and Koletsky retiring,
Yep.
that's what, about 40-some years experience gone?
More like 65.
Yeah, I think Dick alone
it?
was 40 years.
I was trying to be nice to those two guys, come on. I know, Dave.
No, we lost, yeah, with respect to Dick and Dave, we lost a lot of institutional knowledge, you know, obviously, and just
I know they've been
good
around for a
workers and a lot of experience there, no doubt.
Yeah.
Seasonal staff, not a whole lot changing here. We basically have our engineering help during the summer, operation and maintenance help, water treatment and wastewater treatment. Cemetery maintenance, that was a little bit new in 17, and we're still looking at that and how we should go about that. But we did contract for cemetery maintenance in 16. We got burnt a little bit cost-wise with the rather wet summer, so we went to a model where we had two seasonal cemetery maintenance people, and we're looking at if we're going to continue with this model or how we're going to approach the cemetery maintenance this summer. But we did save about $16,000, you know, going to this model in 17 in comparison to what happened in 16 when we contracted the mowing. Core services, public works, this is something that John and I refresh on occasion and try to keep somewhat up to date, but this is everything we do, and this is how we've basically prioritized it from a service standpoint. And then we'll get into major accomplishments, and we've broken these up a little bit as far as new construction, rehabilitation, infrastructure maintenance and the likes, so I'm not going to belabor any of this, but you've heard plenty about our Denver project last year, School and Roberts Trail project, new trails out there, Hotel Access Road, Alley 52 improvements. We added a lift station grinder out at our Hats lift station facility. Pavement management, you know, some of these are more involved than others. Obviously, Robertson School Road was a full reconstruction project. School Road north of the bridge was a mill and overlay that we were able to make happen. We did some alley work last year, and then a little bit of actually just basically one block mill and overlay work just out our back door here.
And those should be southeast, not southwest, correct?
You are correct, yes.
Sorry to critique you, but I did
Yeah,
read
well,
it.
you're critiquing John, actually, on that one. Otherwise, rehabilitation, we put parking lot I into that grouping. We did procure the new membrane bioreactor cassettes out at the wastewater facility, and then we started our lift station rehabilitation program last year with the Harmony Lift Station, and that actually just was commissioned about a week ago, or late last week. Infrastructure maintenance, 5th Avenue Southeast, we've done a little bit of drainage improvements, Shady Ridge, Alley 53, Spruce Street Northeast, put a edge tile basically in to help out with some of the poor drainage that was happening on the east edge of that roadway. And then Roberts and A Street, we tried to address that area. Basically, it's somewhat of a incompletely developed area. So it's not fully graded. It's a stub street, and we just had to clean that up so things could positively drain to some degree. Yeah, a variety of things here that we accomplished through our infrastructure maintenance program. Basically, the $250,000 or so that we dedicate every year, and we did deliver a bit more on that front this year. We had a carryover balance going into 2017, so I think we delivered $350,000 or so, 350, 370-ish in the end. See if there's anything specific. Yeah, variety of things like I mentioned. A little bit more on the infrastructure maintenance side of things. One of the big ones here was the Century Avenue Southeast Trail. Reclaiming that and repaving that prior to our Century Avenue project here in 2018. We wanted to get that addressed. Otherwise, on the grant front, we had a DNR LCCMR grant for tree planting. Fortunate enough to capture that and deliver 75 trees. Closed out a couple airport maintenance grants, and then we applied for one. We talked quite a bit about our local road improvement program application for South Grade Road. We did not receive that. However, if you're paying attention to I guess how the bonding bill might be shaped, or hopefully will be crafted within the state legislature, this program, and due to the number of applications last year, is getting a lot of press, and there's talk about dedicating $100 million to this program. So we'll see what happens. If that happens, I think our project should fall into the mix. You know, I think I might have sent this.
I'm glad you're optimistic.
Well, things didn't work in our favor because we actually, last year's bonding bill, we had a couple local projects in the region here that were earmarked. So that didn't help what came to District 8 divvying up the rest of the money. So I think we'll be in a little bit more favorable position. There's money coming that direction in the future. Study planning efforts. We've got our lake and river basin study. Basically have that finalized, and staff is reviewing that, how we're going to move forward. Dakota Rail Trail preliminary engineering study. That's scoping. Well, it's been scoped, and we've gathered information, and basically it's at a final draft point right now. South Grade Road intersections feasibility study. Yeah, that's a study we did prior to our grant application for that local road improvement program. We've brought that to Resource Allocation Committee, and we're in the process of finalizing that with the consultant. And then we can't forget Highway 15 downtown. I use planning as a broad term. You know, in 17, the consultant was selected, scoping, a lot of work on the layout, intersection control evaluations. You know, we created our citizen advisory group and just started the public engagement process. Obviously, MnDOT and the consultant are leading that, and we're assisting as needed. I'm just going to skip 2018. You know, this reflects what's in the capital improvement plan as far as 2018 goes. So the big one's going to be Century Avenue Southeast, hopefully the South Central trunk storm sewer pond, the first phase of that trunk storm sewer system. And then the third large project this year will be the 2nd Avenue Southeast Bridge, which has been bid and awarded. Seal coating, and then we need to get back to Alley 17, I know, and have a discussion about alleys and how we're going to approach, you know, these petitioned alley projects from a delivery assessment standpoint. Yeah, I guess there's a few larger things on the radar maybe I should mention. You know, we might deliver a pavement management program up in the northeast side of town, depending on how our Century Avenue bids come in. TDK and Uperner, we're working with Miles, the EDA, and possibly delivering a public roadway off of Highway 7 there, basically the existing driveway alignment. And then otherwise, some trail improvements. You know, we have the Highway 7 in Montana pedestrian crossing system. All sorts of typos here.
It's Russian there.
No. That's between, some of these are John, some are me, so. So, goes both ways. Yeah, and trail improvements, and then mill and overlay projects. We're looking out a little bit maybe in the future. I don't know if we'll be able to deliver these, but we have to get a good understanding of how we're gonna possibly deliver mill and overlays on roadways that aren't all that old. And whether we're gonna attempt to assess for them, or we're going to treat them more as a maintenance project. But we have some roads like Edmonton and School Road Northwest that aren't terribly old that should be covered up. So we're gonna get a handle on that. I don't think we'll be attempting to deliver these this year with the, all the potential
So when you
improvements I listed above.
So when you say they're not that terribly old, how old are those streets?
Edmonton's 02, 03 timeframe. School Road Northwest is a little bit before that, about 2001, I believe. So, you know, our policy states 20 years, and, you know, they're starting to get to that point, albeit, yeah, if I'm an adjacent property owner, I would hate to see an assessment coming my way every 20 years. So
Well,
that's
and,
what we need to get a handle on is,
On Edmonton, on the north side, you've got double fronted lots. So how, you know,
yes, Edmonton was a unique scenario with, yeah, basically
well, on both
they
sides.
back, yeah, they back to the, to Edmonton corridor. I believe the adjacent properties were only assessed 25% on either side. So the city picked up half of the assessment, and then 25 and 25 on either side of the road was the basic assessment approach. We could attempt to do that again, but like I said, we're kind of up against that 20-year time frame, and I don't know if we dare wait 20 years. You know, that'd be another 3, 4, 5 years.
So what's the problem?
I think
why do you
it's
think
more
that?
underlining soils in some of these areas. You know, Edmonton's underlining soils. You get up in that Somerset area, basically the undeveloped subdivision to the north of Edmonton there. You know, those streets were built in '05. I mean, they look like they're
I
30
know.
years old. It's
I had to go
scary.
down 12 feet for footings on a deck one time.
Yeah, so that, I mean, it's just poor native soils in that area. And granted, you can sometimes build the road over those and meet all the specs and the subgrade passes and the likes, but, you know, you have wet clays lying beneath the roadway that, when they freeze, they expand and they break up the roads and they move over the course of time. Yeah, we don't have good sand in all areas of town or favorable subgrade soils. You know, it's a balancing act. You know, you could ask a developer, well, we know we got poor soils here. You gotta, instead of the typical 2 feet, you need to dig out 4 feet and build those roads. But as soon as we ask for that, I'm sure they're gonna be standing in front of you guys telling you how bad your staff is, you know. So that's we have our typical standards. If they can deliver them on the subgrade soils, they can deliver them. We oversee the construction, and we did in '05 on those streets. And, you know, you can sometimes meet the tests, you know, as you build things, but it doesn't mean they're gonna perform, everything's gonna perform the same. That's what it boils down to.
But like School Road in Edmonton, those were city
School
built.
Road, yeah, that section of School Road is pretty unique. The bituminous mixture that was used was a unique mix at the time that was being tried. It was a MnDOT specified mix, but it's a mix that no longer exists. So that's more of a surface issue that's going on in that segment of School Road. So we have these unique situations, and yeah, we're gonna, like I said, we're not gonna try to deliver these this year. This is something we really need to wrap our minds around. And lastly, LED street lighting. We've been talking a little bit about that lately. Water, wastewater, looking forward, another lift station rehab, and then we have some plant work between blowers, HVAC, ditch and the likes at the wastewater treatment plant, and then we're looking at a well rehab up at the water plant. Streets, replay application, sealing bridges, doing some drainage improvements, localized drainage improvements, trails, basically maintenance of trails, alleys, some parking lot work. Yeah, and then otherwise operation, maintenance, yeah, more sealing. These are just typical programs we've been administering on the maintenance side of thing more than anything. Planning policy, looking forward, obviously continuing the downtown project development design in conjunction with MnDOT and their consultant. Water, wastewater rates, we should begin to take a look at those this year and how we're going to approach that study, that analysis. Right-of-way, small cell implementation management, those ordinances are currently to the cellular providers for their review.
And there was proposed legislation about fees associated with that small cell stuff at the Capitol, but it only got an informational hearing.
Yeah, and that actually was, with my understanding, the macro sites.
I believe, yeah.
Yeah, so that was, they were trying to capture what cities could recoup from cellular companies to review their improvements, proposed improvements on macro sites.
Yeah, it was just
Yep.
another preemptive.
Exactly. They're trying to
Yeah.
pass laws to put a ceiling on their costs. So, yeah. So that was a good thing that went away. We're going to look at our infrastructure maintenance need document, and yeah, we're working on our biosolids program to clearly understand our future options. Yeah, just some general fiscal financial information with respect to our departments, our group of departments. Nothing new here. So basically the mission statement of Public Works that's been in place for some time. I don't know if that was ever adopted, but I do have a plaque on my wall that's been there since I moved into my office, and this is what it does say. So.
It must be official then.
It must be official. It's framed and everything, yeah.
You're saying that Dave hung it up?
Well, I don't know, it was John Roderberg, Marlo Preeve, I don't know. Yeah, and then like I mentioned, here's the variety information within the front end of the document, and then the rest of it's water, wastewater information. So with that, any thoughts, questions? Obviously, emailed it to you guys. This is a hard copy. We're always welcome to, yeah, take on questions, thoughts, and yeah, like I said, we're trying to just gather enough information to get a snapshot in time and go from here.
I guess the one thing I thought of that could be added that might be helpful would be just some other, metrics. There's a lot of activities, but, what are the outcomes? Like our road and quality testing that we do.
Yep.
We did some on the trails now, and water testing just in general. Did we meet all the test requirements that we needed? And how many leaks did we have? How many, water, sewer, backups, the tree diversification, just kind of a variety.
Yeah, we have a little bit of
those.
information on that front, but
Yeah.
we do have all those.
I'm sure you do.
All those things documented. It's just a matter.
But that could be almost like a one-page snapshot. Here are the really the outcomes.
Yep.
Yeah,
Or
and
more
then-
so the unknowns, and a lot of those things I just stress, like water main breaks. I mean, they gauge what happened that year, but they're tough to develop trends to a large degree. I mean,
Well, we did on Main Street.
well, yeah.
Well.
No, before we did that project, obviously. But I think the biggest things are pavement management program, and we're gonna touch on that at one of the meetings in the near future here. So, you know, that's the large, well, I shouldn't sell the pipes in the ground short, but that's the largest investment that people notice day in, day out. And what you're gonna see on that front in the near future is we're doing pretty well, so.
On the pavement.
That pavement management and pavement condition index.
Yeah.
And we're doing $250,000 every 2 years on pavement management, that's the number?
Yeah, seal coating, basically. Yeah, we deliver a seal coating project on the even years.
And that was, I mean, that was another one of those things that there was a bill to raise the competitive bidding limitation from $100,000 to $175,000. And I'm not sure, I haven't followed, I would imagine you follow where that went. That
Yeah, I
was
saw that. I haven't
Dan
seen much
Hall.
on it. I don't know if it went away now or, yeah, I haven't seen much recently.
Well, they talked about it last Thursday morning.
Oh, they did? And-
Well, that, just at League of Minnesota Cities.
Okay.
The thing. So I don't know that it was in a conference committee.
Or committee or anything? Yeah, I didn't. I heard some rumblings, but I hadn't heard that it advanced to committee or anything. Yeah.
Just getting back to the pipes and the leaks, you know, you do note in the report that stuff's aging, so.
Yes.
So, and I know doesn't automatically mean that we have to replace them. We can line them like we did before, but.
Yeah, from a pipe infrastructure, sewer and water, sanitary and storm, so, yeah, we're confident with how we're inventorying the condition of those facilities, and, you know, like you touched on, we do keep a very detailed break history, water main breaks, and, you know, sewer issues, and we got our hot spots, you know, where we have to jet more often from a sanitary sewer standpoint, but we are televising and utilizing televising, I think, almost to a fault, because we want to know exactly what's going on both in our sanitary pipes and our storm sewer pipes before we do these roadway projects. And then we address them, do spot repairs or dig up and replace those lines. But if we can identify and there's an issue there that we feel can be addressed with the trenchless technology, whether it be in the near future or distant future, you know, we'll typically let the pipe be and save the money, because we're confident, and John's confident in those approaches. You know, we were very successful on that water main lining south of downtown under Highway 15 a few years back, and we've done some sewer lining, some spot sewer lining. So.
Yeah. Then there's the infiltration aspect that
Yep.
the wastewater plant sees.
Yeah, we're lining manholes, you know, so John and staff's put a lot of time into finding a good approach that we're confident in. Some of these manhole lining systems can be a little bit of snake oil, so we're confident we're making a good investment on that front too.
And then finally with the water, you know, we have that insurance.
Yep, water
policy.
services.
Yeah, so again, just knowing how that's working, you know, how that fits in, so it's just
We're
things
doing
like
very
that.
well on that. We haven't raised that rate since the very beginning.
Yeah,
And I would say we're typically within the funds that are generated to address
what does happen.
private services, yeah. So that has gone very well for several years. We had one today, you know, that we fixed. It was on Corp from the main onto the service line. So under the ordinance, it would have been the property owner's responsibility. In this case, because of that policy, we're able to, you know, initiate that repair, get in there, get it done. The homeowner's more than likely not going to have any expenditure in that, even after we restore and repave that area. So it's a good program.
Yeah. It's just a way to highlight it, get it out there too.
I guess as long as you're talking about water, I mean, and see, you sent that out to me too quick, so I looked at it. On the water side, maybe this is a question for Eric Levine.
Yep.
So we're fluoridating our water by using hydrofluorosilicic acid, I believe. I mean, And I, you
Not
know, so
certain
I
exact
Googled it, and then it
chemical.
talked about where there's arsenic in that, so I'm guessing that the water gets fluoridated, then it goes through reverse osmosis, we get rid of the arsenic. You know, I just,
I'm assuming we're
Yeah.
not,
Oh, that's one of the test results.
yeah, one of the test results, but I just, you
Yeah,
know,
no, that's
we
more
had
of a
purchased like
Levine question,
2,000
but-
gallons of it.
all I
last
know
year.
is a few years back, we studied our fluoridation levels and we actually reduced them. We're still achieving state requirements by all
EPA, yeah.
means, but we dialed it in and put some effort on that front because there's no need to put too much fluoride into your, you know, your water supply. And you're exactly right. There's some literature out there, too much fluoride can have some adverse.
This was more about
effects.
it's a byproduct of fertilizer, I believe, and there's some arsenic in it, so I think we have a sophisticated enough waste or water treatment facility that it would, any arsenic that gets added by adding the fluoride gets filtered out before we drink
No,
it.
we better.
You just-
Now I worry
community
that
concern.
If
we're
we
gonna
don't,
change our name
not
to
many
Flint,
other,
Michigan.
not many people do.
All I know is the guys from the Bobrine Brewing, the,
Oh, well, yeah,
they say that our water is
is
one of
good.
the best ones around, that because they get their water tested too, you know.
Well, that's good because I just bought a IPA brew kit from the supplier on Saturday, so.
Well, we'll know where John is every Saturday then.
Well, I'll give it a try again.
Anything else for Kent?
Thanks, gentlemen.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Kent. John? We do have a public hearing. Ordinance number 18-781, ordinance approving revisions to the section of the Hutchinson City Charter as recommended by the Charter Commission. Second reading and adoption. Mr. Sabora.
Thank you very much, Mayor and council members. As you mentioned, this is the second reading for this proposed ordinance that would change some sections of the Hutchinson City Charter. I believe this is the third or fourth time I've been before you on this topic, but I'll just give you the quick nutshell version again. The 2017 legislature passed a law requiring that special election dates in all cities be held only on certain dates of the year. And we had sections in our city charter that more or less had special election dates that could be, I guess we would call fluid, not necessarily tied to a certain calendar date, but based on certain events that might happen as far as if a petition was submitted to the city or other things like that. So in recognition of the law being changed by the state, the Charter Commission met in late November 2017, and I believe late January of 2018 to talk about some possible charter changes that could be enacted in relation to this new state law. They did see a couple different areas of the charter that they felt should be changed, and as you know, forwarded on those recommendations for you for consideration. You previously had a first reading, I believe 2 meetings ago, of this ordinance, but the state law requires that there be a public hearing before charter changes are enacted by an ordinance, which is why we're having this hearing tonight. I did want to just at least put the proposed changes on the screen for your review and also those who might be viewing this exciting topic at home. And I'm just going to take them in numerical order as they appear or would appear in the revised charter. So the first one deals with vacancies in the city council. If someone decides they're going to resign from the council or dies or moves away, the current language in there talks about if there's a vacancy in the remaining term of longer than a year, that there would be election added before the next at the next regular municipal election. The Charter Commission recommended that that phrase be stricken, and instead the language would read that the special election would be held on the earliest date permitted under Minnesota law. And you're going to find that's going to be consistent with all the things we're going to talk about tonight. The Charter Commission recommended language that was, I guess, more general in language or would refer back to the state law so that there really wouldn't be any confusion about when those dates for special elections could be held. The next section that's proposed to be changed, we have a section dealing directly with special elections, and the Charter Commission recommended that there be a sentence added to that, simply saying that special elections in the city shall be held on those dates permitted by Minnesota law. And again, that's just going to tie back to if there's ever a question when special elections can be held, they're going to be able to be held on those 5 dates that the legislature says they can be held on. Section 5.6, we have a section on initiative, and as you all may be aware or should be aware, an initiative is when someone from the public circulates a petition to have an ordinance enacted or an ordinance changed. And in its current reading, it talks about the fact that once a sufficient petition is submitted to the city, that there would be an election that would occur 120 days after the filing of the petition. If there was going to be an election that was already scheduled under the old calendar, the Charter Commission recommended now that language would be changed to be saying that there's going to be an election on that initiative on the earliest date permitted under Minnesota law, again referring back to those dates allowed by the legislature for special elections.
As far as referendums, that would be covered under the special election clause?
Correct. And then finally, Section 5.9 dealing with recall elections. If for some reason an elected official committed misfeasance or malfeasance in office and was going to be recalled from their seat on the council, our current language talked about the fact that there had to be an election not less than 30 nor more than 45 days after the meeting when that was brought up before the city council. Again, the Charter Commission recommended that that language be changed to read that election would be held on the earliest date permitted under Minnesota law. And one thing I should have talked about with regard to all of these changes, part of the impetus behind having this more general language is the fact that the way things are set up with the county auditor's office, with the requirements that cities have to go through for holding elections, getting absentee ballots ready, having publication requirements, getting voting machines ready, things of that nature. All of those things take time to fall into place to make sure that an election is handled properly and fairly, which really is one of the underpinnings of this more general language. So those are the changes that are proposed to be made. As I mentioned before, it's the second reading of the ordinance. Certainly if there's any comments from the public with regard to the changes that are being proposed, this is their opportunity to talk to you about those. And if not, if you have any questions, I'm happy to try to address those.
Mark, do you have the exact?
Sure. So right, under the new law, special elections can only be held on the second Tuesday in February, the second Tuesday in April, the second Tuesday in May, the second Tuesday in August, the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November each year.
Public comment? Motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion by John, second by Chad to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. We need a motion to approve this ordinance.
So moved.
I'll second it. Motion by Steve, second by myself to approve the ordinance. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Thank you
Thanks,
very
Mark.
much.
Andy Reed, presentation of proposed financial management plan.
Andy and I will kind of
Oh,
tag team.
you're gonna
it, so-
tag team it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Included in your council packet tonight is, this is mainly just to get the document out in front of the council at this point, to have you guys start looking at it. But what Andy and I have worked on actually probably for the last 2 years, and I'll readily admit Andy has done most of the work, but was the idea of putting together within one document all of our financial policies. So currently, we've got financial policies kind of spread throughout the organization, whether it's in code or policy. And so part of this was to put it all in one document to make it easier for the council, so we start getting into budget discussions, but also to put it in front of staff too, obviously as they work through the budget process. Some of these documents did exist, and there's been some improvements to them. There's been changes to past documents, and then quite frankly, there was a good handful that did not exist, that we're looking to add to council, I guess, for your consideration. And so I want to touch on a couple of those, so at least if you're aware of them. Page 8, cash controls and procedures. This would replace city policy 1.14, which deals with cash. On page 23, purchasing policy, this would replace policy 1.11, currently in place. Page 32 to 33, that would replace policies 3.22 and 3.3, and obviously those are items you'd like to take a look at, just let me know and we can pass those on to you to look at. And so a couple things that I did want you to at least just to start considering as you're looking at this is if there are any specific policy items as a council that either you're not comfortable with or you want to consider for changing. One of the things that we put in here, and this is on page 16, it deals with government funds, is that, right now, we talk about how the state has a policy, or the state auditor recommends that the city have at least a fund balance of 35%. Our policy states 40%. One of the things that we put in there was a measure that deals with 50%. Okay, are we over 50%? When we get to 50% or more, and this is really more of a policy question for you guys to consider, do we have an automatic kicker that pushes that money into a certain fund or not? Something for you guys, we don't have that right now. Basically it says fund balance in excess of 50% shall be reviewed by the council to determine if such excess funds should be transferred to other funds. So we've kind of left that open, but I'm thinking more of some of the things that happen at the state, an automatic transfer that goes into education fund or the rainy day fund, or that, like I said, we don't have that, but that's at least, those are the items we kind of want, I guess, the council to think about as you look at this. Is there something that you'd like to see? And so, obviously, it's 36 pages. There's a lot of information. One of the things that we want to ask is if there's a desire to have a workshop on any of this, to, I guess, kind of let us know. Intentions at this point would be to have the council look to act on this at your second meeting in April. So, anything I maybe missed you wanted to interject?
No, I think you did a good job covering it. I just was going to point out that there's several policies within this document that deal with financial planning, which serves all of our purposes, but then there's also a good chunk that deal with more serving as a resource for city staff and being a guide for them in their day-to-day operations and managing their budget. Putting it all in one document, I think, is very beneficial, just so I can hand this, or the departments can hand this to their employees, and everything they need to know is within this document, rather than always calling the finance department, how do we do this, how do we do that? So I think this was a very beneficial step, and it did take a while to produce, but hoping you guys see the benefit in it. And
I'm assuming we'll probably add to it over the years too.
Right, it's not perfect, it's a good first step, and we know we're going to be tweaking this as we go. We'll be reviewing it most likely annually and making changes as we see needed. So that's all I needed to point out.
One thing I noticed or didn't see, maybe a suggestion would be to, and maybe it's in there, but I didn't get all the way through it yet, but, you know, a schedule for review. How often, you know, should this be reviewed every 2 years, 3 years, you know, just to update that, just so that we make sure it's done. And like with the debt management plan, you know, it has, including that graph that we use, and that would obviously change over time too. That could be added, but there's one reference where the debt levy would be like 2.6 million. Well, really that doesn't happen till like 2030 if everything goes according to plan, but you know, if there was that graph, help to, yeah, explain that, that's a good visual. And
I guess that's, you know, as we, obviously that's a good question, I think, for the council. Is this something that wants to be reviewed every year? I think that's something that we can just put into the policy, you know, it's every year or every other year for consideration. That's something that we like to, obviously, might be good every 2 years, because that's generally our election cycle. Every 2 years, so you're gonna have potentially new council members.
Right.
That's 2 years. So.
in that respect, it's a great guide, as you said, for staff and council.
And for council, yeah. Like I said, we're gonna bring it back in about a month, but just to give you guys some time to look it over.
Alrighty. Thanks, Matt. Andy? Unfinished business, ordinance number 18-782, an ordinance suspending enforcement of Hutchinson City Ordinance 92.018 pertaining to the hours of use of sound amplification equipment, shorter wedding, second reading and adoption.
Mayor and council, you guys considered the first reading of this ordinance at your last council meeting. Obviously, this is regarding a wedding that's being planned for May 12th. There hasn't been any, I guess, additions or changes since the first reading of the ordinance.
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Motion by Steve, second by Mary to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. New business, resolution number 14864, or I'm sorry, resolution number 14868, resolution amending the 2018 general fund budget.
This one Andy will take.
This one will Andy
Good evening, Mayor,
take?
Council. Actually, the next two items are related, and I think to handle in the proper order, we should start with Resolution 14870, if you don't mind.
Sure, that's
And
fine.
that is looking to amend Resolution number 13853 that was passed back in 2011. It set the funding of our tree disease infestation and mitigation plan, $55,000 being transferred annually out of the refuse fund into the general fund. And over the last 8 years since that was put into place, our fund balance for that plan is now at over $400,000. So it's starting to be a sizable sum within our general fund. And it's to the point now where it's starting to distort, or not distort, but we can't forget that it's within our general fund. And I'm starting to get a little worried. It's at 3% of our general fund now, that we should act now, take it out of the general fund, so we don't confuse matters in the future when we start looking at our general fund balance for specific projects. So basically, what I'm proposing tonight is to set up a special revenue fund where this fund balance of $401,000 would be transferred into that special revenue fund and allow us to track the tree disease mitigation efforts individually outside of the general fund. I think it'll provide for more transparency as well. You'll be able to see a balance sheet and income statement separate for this activity. And then also getting it out of the general fund will be helpful as well.
For the 40-50%.
As for that as well, but out in the future years, as we expect the expenditures for this program to grow, those will be some sizable expenditures coming out of the general fund. as the Emerald Ash Borer nears Hutchinson or comes into Hutchinson. So that's the main reasoning behind my agenda item. So I'm really looking for 2 action items here, and one is to amend that past resolution to basically set the funding to go into a new special revenue fund as opposed to the general fund. And then the second action item would be approving the transfer of the fund balance out of the general fund and into that new special revenue fund. And that transfer amount is $401,288.
Can we do both of them?
That's item 14, right?
That is item 14.
I would do that separately because there's an additional amendment on
All right.
13.
Okay.
As long as we're talking about Emerald Ash Borer, I'll knock out the stuff from the Capitol. Proposal for a $10 million per year fund to fight Emerald Ash Borer at the Capitol. So I don't know that we'd tie into any of that, but that was out there.
All right.
I think this really makes sense, Andy, so thanks for bringing it up.
Sure.
I think it's a good idea, too.
All right, we'll do resolution number 14870 first. Have a motion for that?
Make a motion to approve that resolution.
A second.
Motion by John, second by Steve to approve resolution number 14870. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. And then resolution number 14868, resolution amending the 2018 general fund budget. Have a motion for that, please?
First, let Andy explain that.
Oh,
Right.
sorry.
We're proposing 3 amendments tonight. 2 of them are
Okay.
dealing with the resolution you just passed. And the first part would be eliminating the operating expense and revenue out of the general fund related to that tree disease mitigation plan. So we'd be taking $25,000 of expense out of the streets department budget, and then also removing that $25,000 of fund balance revenue we've put into our budget to show that we're using reserves to fund those expenses. So both of those components would be coming out, would have 0 impact on the bottom line of the general fund. And then the second component would be budgeting for that transfer of fund balance, the $401,000, transferring those funds out of the general fund and to the special revenue fund. Since that wasn't included in our original budget, we should amend our budget to reflect the council's approval of that transfer.
Just wondering when work needs to be done and money withdrawn from that, will be the street department or Public Works.
Right. There'll obviously be some general fund expenses involved, more from the labor standpoint, but we should be able to isolate expenditures, tree purchases, for example. We do that currently right now with the Public Sites Fund with some of those developer trees. As trees are purchased, we allocate them either to the general fund or to the Public Sites Fund as needed. So talking with John, he felt that would be very doable with this new structure as well, just allocating trees over to the Special Revenue Fund.
And then Andy, within the same budget amendment, we're looking at bumping the,
Right.
with, we've attempted probably for 4 or 5 years to try to scan all of our, and it's just, we found out it's not working between interns and assistants, and we just felt we had a proposal. I don't think we were planning on being at the price that it was, which was a good thing. We thought it'd be a lot higher, and so we felt it'd be an appropriate time to look at scanning those documents into PDF to get them online.
So theoretically, when they're all scanned, people will be able to access property records and see if building permits were pulled and stuff.
You want to speak to that, Dan?
I mean, that's
Right now, the goal is just to get them scanned in Laserfiche. Most of the documents would end up being TIFF images. Eventually, there may be some capability to have those be online, but we'd have to determine if there's any private information. But our first step is just to have those be available for staff usage instead of having our hard copy files that are being overwhelmed with paperwork.
How do, you do audits? I mean, just to see how good the resolution is? I'm just guessing that with paper and pencil markings or pens, that sometimes it might be a little harder to read, and then when you scan it, does that get lost? Or
Yeah,
or will you still have the paper?
theoretically, the paper would be gone.
Okay.
And the companies that do this, basically, the scanning counts as your record of forever, of having to keep it. And they basically go through and, once it's scanned, verify that everything is legible. That's part of the process.
All right, good.
So,
And then they dispose of the paper records for the city, or?
that's something we're going to work out to determine how we want to handle that. Theoretically, they can do that. It's up to Tom and I to determine if we want to have the company do that or if we'll dispose of it or shred it ourselves.
Are there any records that were required to keep as paper records?
And that's part of the process that we'll have to go through. The Minnesota Data Practice Records does, there's certain requirements. I think those are slowly coming down for what we need to keep as paper, but they do have lists of what needs to maintain in a. I mean, you and I, we get pretty bored when we study that stuff all the time.
Right, I mean, the Records Retention Act says that we have to keep certain records for certain lengths of time, and some records you have to keep forever, but I don't know if it specifies a certain format.
I think there's certain aspects, yeah.
Only election records.
That's right.
We believe that, almost 100% of our documents in planning and zoning address files will be able to be retained electronically. We don't have the type of records that are likely to be needed in hard copy.
And most of the stuff we probably really get into question with is when it comes to minute books, and I think those you have to.
I think
hang on to those.
So currently, anything new is being done electronically? There's no paper, or is there actually
No,
paper too?
that would be implemented with this. You kind of have to do it all in one step, otherwise you're having two different filing systems. So
Gotcha.
once we start electronically, then when we print things, it'll get printed electronically and saved right to the network.
But Dan, we've already kind of started our procedures to.
Oh, we have the procedure set up, how we will do it. We just haven't necessarily, we're still printing paper records.
But then there's still going to be some paper files on the south side of the building, apparently?
Yeah, what we need to do on the south side is
The way
really
back.
determine,
Go ahead.
we need to determine we don't have a method like they've established on the south side of the building, because we've got to go through that to determine what's public, what's private. A lot more of our stuff is
private.
Is public and private, and because a lot of what we have on this side is personnel files.
Okay.
So that's the
I didn't.
next challenge for us.
Right now on the planning and zoning side, the building inspections are all done off the iPad or whatever you've got. I mean, Kyle was doing the paperwork on the fire in the car in front of my house the other day, and that's all electronic.
Yeah, but it ends up
But
being
it
a
ends up
piece of
getting
paper in the
printed,
end,
too.
so that'll all help. So,
When he does an inspection, he prints the certificate off for you in his
exactly.
vehicle
So
and gives it to us.
this will help us become more efficient in the long run with our filing and being able to search records
Sure.
by address, by keyword, et cetera.
Big. So we just need a motion to approve that.
Yep.
Resolution 14868, which encompasses all those.
Yep.
I'll make that a motion.
I'll second that.
Motion by Steve, second by Mary to approve. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. We do have resolution number 14871, approving lease agreement with Hutchinson Health Partners.
Mayor and council, as we were all made aware back in, well, probably late last year, but as both Hutchinson Health and Health Partners spoke in front of the council back in early January, we had learned that they're heading down the avenue of a merger. And under our current existing lease, that type of transaction would result in the termination of the lease and the conveyance of all the property to Hutchinson Health in exchange of a payment equal to the net present value of that property. That's what was laid out in the current lease of it, based after the calculations done by our financial advisors. Both the parties have agreed, both the city, at least those, I should say, those of us that are working on behalf of the city and Hutchinson Health, have agreed on a $6.2 million payment as the net present value. And so as we were working through both the net present value and in communications with Hutchinson Health, we learned that there could be an advantage to keep that property subject to the lease and then have them work with us to find, and then we have worked with them to find a low-risk approach to accommodating that. And I believe that staff has worked to minimize the risk to the city in the lease amendment that's been laid out in front of you tonight for consideration and was addressed in the memo put together by Mark. In short, the city will receive the expected cash payment. We have the right to terminate the lease and convey the property to Hutchinson Health at any time, and and we've also established guarantees from Park Nicollet Health System backing up and indemnifying the obligation of Hutchinson Health to the city, and the obligation to take conveyance of the property whenever the city feels like it would be necessary, and actually vice versa, the hospital has that same exact right as well. As Mark and we worked with Paul Torgerson on this, along with both Gary, our Councilmember Cook, and Mayor Forcier. I think we believe that the material risks associated with the ongoing lease have been effectively mitigated, and that the goals of the 2012 amendment have been achieved in basically this new form. And so we also feel that, I think as we have for years with Hutchinson Health, we believe that this is another great partnership, if you want to say, to provide the overall best care for not only the residents of Hutchinson, but those in this area that are going to use the services that Hutchinson Health and Health Partners will be providing. And so, it's a lot of information. You've got a couple different documents that have been included in your council packet, but as I said, Mark and Steve and Gary and Paul, I think we've probably as best as possible come up with a win-win situation here. So, Mark, I don't know if there was Steve or Gary. So.
Yeah. I did reach out to Paul Torgerson. Paul's been the attorney that's helped us from the very beginning on this, just like Hutchinson Health had an attorney that represented them through the different steps with this. But I've been involved with each part as well as Mark, but so I just reached out to Paul to thank him, for his efforts, and I just wanted to share a little bit what he responded. But he just said, congratulations are in order to both the city and Hutchinson Health for jobs well done in advancing their respective missions in that regard. He said, these can be inherently complicated and, pose challenging issues, but it takes patience and trust among the parties to find the proper balance, and we really think we achieved that with this. And Paul did comment and commend city staff, for their work and knowledge. Mark and Andy and Matt, he thought Matt really, had a good handle on this, probably based on your your experience from before. Yeah. But a lot of work that went into it, but I think again it met all the objectives, even from going back in 2005 when it first got really serious to be talked about, and each step of the way. I think it, again, was a good partnership, good processes, good outcomes for both parties. So.
And I apologize that I mentioned Andy. He was heavily involved on the financial side, working with Ellers on the net present value. And I just want to make sure that we're clear for both the council and the public, you know, what we're basically looking at is a prepayment of the lease for that $6.2 million. As a dollar payment a year for
30
however long the lease goes out. One of the things that we didn't want to do, and I don't think we did in this, is bind a future council to any type of obligation, or even the hospital to a future obligation, is that, quite frankly, at any time, if anybody's not comfortable with the way things are working, that either party can get out, so.
And the only property that's separated out of the lease agreement is the downtown hospital auxiliary building and the Fremont Avenue property.
Yep, that was the one thing we didn't touch on.
Right, you know, one of the things that the city was interested in was trying to minimize any liability we might have for any real property that we still had control of. And so, right, that is part of the agreement. We're going to be conveying, hopefully in the near future, those two properties to Hutchinson Health to help minimize those risks. But along those lines, as you consider the approval of the resolution tonight, I did hand out an amended Exhibit A to each of you. I had some communications with the attorney representing the hospital and health partners regarding the legal description. That legal description for the hospital land has been changed to reflect the legal description in the original deed that the city got it in, which is different than what was originally proposed, which was more or less just, I guess, cut and paste just to serve the purposes of the original lease back in 2007. So the legal description is the same. It's just covering the, you know, the parcel of land that the hospital building is on and the hospital building's parking lot, but it's just saying it in 6 more paragraphs.
That's what abstracting is all about.
Right.
And that's what my wife used to hate.
That.
My wife hated doing that.
Right. But we did have some consultation with Jeff Roush of Pellin and Land Surveying, and it is an accurate description, although it is different.
And then the resolution says that at the very end that the city administrator is authorized to make minor, non-substantive.
Yeah, there was a couple
Table of
minor
contents.
things, table of contents things that were updated, but I'm not anticipating we'll have any significant.
I think it's a good partnership.
I think I'll give this to Julie when I get home.
Yeah.
She'll appreciate
Good old
that.
days.
Yeah.
That goes back to the very founding of the city. You see those same rods and, you know, just,
Exactly.
it's amazing. Anyway. Great. Make a motion to approve.
I'll second it.
Motion by Steve, second by Chad to approve resolution number 14871. Any other discussion?
I don't know if Dr. Mulder's in the audience, if you want to say anything, put you on the spot, or maybe not, so.
While it formally may be separated out, informally, I wanted to continue.
Dr. Mulder, could you please come up and, so everybody can hear you?
Do I need to introduce myself?
Sure, why not?
Steve Mulder, President and CEO of Hutchinson Health. And I want to echo the sentiment that this has been a great partnership. And while formally, some of those formal bonds may be a lot less than they were, we want to continue that if in a more informal basis. And to that end, I'll be before this council sometime in the next month or so with my annual report, which we intend to continue. So I want to thank you all.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Call a motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Governance, we have snow removal and ice control report for February 2018. City of Hutchinson Financial Report and Investment Report for February 2018. Public Arts Commission minutes from January 11th and February 8th, 2018. Hutchinson Housing Redevelopment Authority Board minutes from February 20th, 2018. Planning Commission minutes from January 16th, 2018. Andy, you got anything else for us tonight?
Well, I can let you know, Finance just transferred all our 2017 financial data to the auditors today. So that part's done. In 2 weeks, they'll be in for field work, and then the fun really begins. Good day to get
two finance directors.
good day to get those files sent off.
Andy, I was just curious, with the financial plan and Matt, GFOA, Government Finance Officers, did you pull information or help with that? And then Andy, have you ever gone to one of their conferences?
Yeah, I've actually been to the last 3 conferences
Excellent. Good.
with the GFOA, and yes, we do share a lot of resources. I reviewed a lot of different city policies when I put this together, pulled nice tidbits out of certain ones, and it was kind of a compilation, some from Matt's old work as well. So, yeah, there's a lot of shared ideas that went into this policy or plan.
Thanks.
Cool. Tim, you have anything for us? Since you always talk so much.
Well, the sunshine out there is
Yeah.
promising for help with our present biosolids removal system and land flying, so we can dry those fields out so we can get back to it.
Sounds good. Thanks. Ken?
Yeah, one thing kind of on the same note, alleys in town, and they are going to be problematic to say the least here for the next few weeks. Hopefully things will start warming up and we'll see a little more sunshine would help also on that front. So just ask people to slow down. If you can avoid utilizing the alleys, that would be a good thing.
Can't do that, sorry.
Yeah, I know, in some people's circumstances, no, you can't do that, I realize that, but, yeah, slow down so we don't beat them up too bad and, try to limit the traffic on them. It's gonna be at this rate, it's gonna be a good 2-3 weeks, I imagine, before we can actually do something with them.
Yeah, this is the worst time of year.
Yeah. Still lots of frost in the ground.
One behind my house is a disaster.
Yeah, there's a lot of them that are a disaster.
It was great until it's those 2 big snows.
Yeah, little moisture on the top, and the moisture doesn't have anywhere to go with the frost in the ground still. That's it?
That's it?
Yep.
Nothing else tonight?
Nothing? Mary?
The only thing I have is I did run into a citizen who commented on our dog park and said, it's the best thing Hutchinson has ever done,
Ever.
I was like, really?
Right up there with
But anyway,
mosquito spraying.
They're very thankful for it. They
Mosquito
like-
spraying just got pushed aside.
Yep, everything else did. But they just said it's really a big advantage to our community and to the pets in the community. So it's nice to know that
Good
some
to hear.
people out there appreciate it.
Yes, good to
So-
hear.
That's it.
Thanks. Chad?
I don't have anything official. I talked to a citizen today that was from Glencoe in the store, and she said she drives to Hutch to go for bike rides because Glencoe doesn't have any bike trails. So that was nice.
There you go.
Good for her.
Yep, but otherwise
Sounds
nothing
good.
official.
Yeah. Steve?
I do have a couple things. One, I was going to say something after the last meeting, but, with the invocation, and then if a pastor's not here, do we have the motion or moment of silence? And I was going to talk to Gary about doing away with the moment of silence, but then as I thought about it more, and I know we've talked about the invocation in the past, but I've never been really comfortable with it, just the separation and lack of diversity and all that, and maybe this is the time to do away with that as well. I started looking, does everybody do it? And I looked at the agendas for the school district, for the county. They don't do it. I looked at agendas for other cities in the county, like Glencoe, Silver Lake, and Winstead. They don't do it. Litchfield doesn't do it. Then I looked at some regional centers, New Ulm, Wilmer, Marshall, Fergus Falls, Brainerd, Albert Lee. They don't do it. And then I looked at Meeker and Sibley counties. They don't have one as well. And so it's not like, we would not be doing something that everybody else is already doing. It just, if the council is okay with that, I think it takes a ordinance change because our agenda is based on an ordinance.
There's two things. We have city code specifically our order of business, and so you an ordinance to amend the city code and then be a policy our policy governance for, not policy governance, but our bylaws for the city council.
But it's not to say that an invocation could not occur. It could occur at the public comment period. I mean, if somebody wanted to address the council and it's not an item on the agenda, if people really felt that strongly, they got the right to do that, I think.
Well, again, the mayor gets to recognize the speakers.
Right.
That would be super awkward, but.
Well,
yeah.
Again, it's not
It's
that
a
I
freedom
don't
of speech.
appreciate what
Yeah.
the pastor's coming here, but again, just the whole separation thing. So, does that seem reasonable to put on the agenda?
I'm okay.
And we will work on providing appropriate action for you guys.
Second thing, a little explanation here. These are in Spanish, but that's all that I was able to get real quickly. But if you look inside, it's really a lot of good bicycle safety information. This is available, a little booklet by the League of American Bicyclists. And we've had some discussions with the school district about initiating an education program called Walk, Bike, Fun. And that hasn't happened yet. That would be part of like the FIED program. So then when I came across this, I thought, well, maybe here's an opportunity for some educational information that could be shared with 4th and 5th graders to start with. And then we could have some in some other areas like the DMV, Department of Rec, Police Department, and down here at City Hall, for people to have. But the idea with the children is start teaching them going forward, and maybe if we get good feedback with it, maybe it's just 4th grade that are going forward from that. So council would be all right with it. They're at about $1 a piece, and I was just wondering about looking at our council funds, city council funds, to talk to Andy, and looking at last year, we had about $5,700 left over. We got 1,000, and we usually get a price break. We would have enough to give to 4th and 5th grade in every elementary school in town, plus have extras left over for these other locations, and just be part of a bicycle safety initiative. The bicycle season starting again here, so be an opportunity to help promote that better. So I'm not asking for approval tonight, but if the council is open to doing that, we could have something on the agenda for the next meeting.
Chad, the JC's always do a bike rodeo, don't they, in the
We
summer?
absolutely are still doing that,
Okay.
Ironically, I'm the chair of said event.
Well, let's get some input here.
So it'll be the 3rd Saturday in May at Tartan Park, from 9 to 11, whatever the date is on that, 19th. No. Where you get a helmet you get a $40 helmet for for $10, I believe. And you get your bike checked, and there's a mountain bike park down there people can rip around on.
Do you do some safety training to them?
You don't do any safety training, just safety checks on the bikes.
Okay.
And make sure you're wearing your helmet, right?
Yeah, yeah, you get fitted for your helmet and everything, so.
We could talk that in here too, and then even our bike patrol could have some of these that they could hand out as they're riding, and situations that they might come across. When was your class again?
May 19th.
Just to get it out there.
9 to 11, down at Target Park.
The other thing, I'm trying to set up a meeting with HCBN, and there's a lot of different bicycle safety videos online. The league's got 18 of them that only last like a minute to a minute and a half, and then there's other ones on YouTube, of course, and so maybe we can have a site somewhere on our webpage that lists some of those that people can go to, and then with our Facebook, that would be another way to get that information out to people as well. So it's the broader.
So is there a link that you have for those? Was that?
Yeah, I can get that to you.
Because I know we can pass it on to Stephanie or I. I'm sure that's something we can just periodically throw out there for the public.
Do that. So as far as these, is that $1,000? Get $1,000, try
Steve,
it.
can you put that on the next agenda for consideration?
You said we had $5,200 left over from last year for city council training.
Well, it's miscellaneous.
Yes, this one, that's
Yeah, it was across all boards, some payroll savings, miscellaneous.
And then the last thing I had was, I had an email today from a college student now, but someone I had known from a friend of one of our sons, but I was wondering if there's ever opportunities for summer internships for college men or women who are considering local government or government positions, and just thought I'd throw it out there.
I mean, we've used them from engineering to planning and zoning. Well, we've got an intern here tonight from the EDA that's helping out. We've got Megan here from the EDA, and so there's opportunities. I mean, that some of it is advertised, some of it is we had requests for. We looked at is there opportunities that we can use, something like that. So, are we open yet? Depending on what they're looking at, what they want to get into, just have them contact somebody, whether it's me or even a department head, if that's the field that they're looking to get into.
Okay. I'll send them, suggest you to start with them.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. That's all, thanks.
Thanks, Steve. John?
Well, I tried to knock out some of my capital update stuff from last week, but just quickly, we're all aware of House File 3830, which was that local option sales tax that would have been added to the calculation for LGA. To the best of my knowledge, it never received a hearing. We're past the hearing deadline, and I did talk to Representative Grunhagen about that and explained to him our issues with it, and he said that he'd pull his name off of it as a co-sponsor. So I don't think we have to worry about that one this year. Another bill that Glenn sponsored along with Dean Erdahl was House File 2292. That's the flushable wipes item that did not receive a hearing. It was read, but it didn't receive a hearing. And Craig Johnson, who is the environmental guy from the League of Minnesota Cities, indicated that there's litigation or they're amending ordinances in Europe right now, and so they're going to wait until next year, and they really push for a coalition of greater Minnesota cities and the League of Minnesota Cities next year. Just kind of in a rhetorical note, I mentioned to Glenn that, we had spent $500,000 in the last 3 years on fixing that kind of stuff, and I think the lobbyists have agreed that about 8% is their stuff. a lot of it's diapers and stuff, and I did the multiplication, we're an average size city, 850 cities, take 8% of that, it's like $20 million a year that it costs cities to deal with that. And then I kind of said, well, if we're worried about min-laws, we could fund the min-laws fix in 3 years with this money. So, so I was trying to be really friendly to them. Another Senate file that's out there is just about giving a carbon reduction credit to nuclear plants. But the interesting thing about that one was that we should realize that Monticello is done producing nuclear energy by 2030, and Prairie Island 2033, 2034. They will not run that long. They will have to be shut down before that. So that ties back to Hutch Utilities, their $17 million peaking operation, and the importance of maybe pushing them toward trying to do more PV solar. But that was a really interesting discussion in that Senate committee. And then the last one that I have, as far as that, is Senate File 3301 and House File 4072. This is a Minnesota housing tax credit. And Senator Nelson from Rochester brought this up. And so this kind of goes to my heart, Habitat for Humanity, but also we've discussed low-income housing and how we would fund it. So what this bill would do would allow $25 million annually to go into a targeted fund for low-income families, or these would be families that are at 115% or less of the median income. So I think in McLeod County, median income is $60,000, so you could be making up to maybe about $70,000, and you would qualify to participate in this program. So this fund is limited right now to $25 million. That money comes from people who have a state tax liability. So if you owe the state of Minnesota $5,000 in income taxes, you can designate that money to go into this fund rather than having to go into the general fund. And North Dakota's already been doing this. It sounded like the city could have a pool of money that would go into a fund, and then that would help match this money. So it was really interesting. Who knows if it's going to go anywhere, but it is scheduled for another hearing in the Senate. I think it went to the Senate Tax Committee maybe tomorrow morning at 10:30, I believe it was. So just interesting that was out there, and it was very, we had talked about it at our strategy meeting. The only other thing I would mention is that the McLeod County Historical Society did hire Brian Haynes as their new executive director. He started yesterday, signed the paperwork yesterday. So he was the Paynesville City Historical Society director, and I'm sure that at some point he'll stick his head in here and introduce himself. That's what I got.
Thanks, Jim. Matt?
Just a couple things. There was an article in the paper, we emailed it to the council regarding the charter school and the ball fields, and I just want to at least let the council and the public know that it's pretty early in preliminary stages that the city's been involved in. I know there's some conversation about investors and potential investors. And, at this moment, there's been nothing committed from the city. That's really how early we've been in that. So I just want to make sure that that's clear, that, as we do obviously with the high school, and as we're going to attempt to do with the charter school, we're always going to look at opportunities to partner if it makes sense for both the city and obviously the potential partner, but there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. I'm not sure if that was clear in that article, that it's still very preliminary. Yes, it's something that we're looking at, it's a conversation that we're having, but there's still a lot of work that needs to be done along that front.
And even with that, there's park and facility master plan.
Yep, and I'm assuming the next month we'll probably have a request in front of the council to go out for an RFP to do a master park plan, so that's all part of, as we talked about 2 weeks ago, there's a lot of projects listed under Park and Rec that we really need to to dive deep into and get a better understanding of. So I just want to make sure that that's clear. And then also, I think I noted this to you, that March 30th through April 18th, our legislators will be on break. And so I know we talked about potentially trying to schedule a time to meet with them. And so I may try to, pose that to them, see if there's a time we can get them to meet with us.
That was one of the discussion items that one of our things was, is it better for you to establish a relationship with them yourself and meet them individually, or is it better to have a meeting with them? So interesting perspective on that, John.
And lastly, this is more or less a shout out to Ms. Mason's third grade class. Only spent 5 sessions there talking about cities through the junior achievement program, and I told them I was going to do a shout out to them on the radio, and I forgot, so I'm going to do a shout out to them at the council meeting. So that's it for me.
Couple things, I know Chad's been dealing with this, and so have I. The alley behind Benny's Meat Market, I know I was gonna have John kind of talk to it, maybe I talked to Kent about it. The alleys are for delivery, so if there's a delivery truck, it has the right to be there blocking the way to the mailbox. So I use that mailbox too. And when I drive up and there's a truck there, I go and do something else and come back, because the truck don't sit there forever. You can't, maybe you can shed some light on that part of it?
Yeah, no, I think you pretty well touched on it. That's the nature of a downtown alley. That's what it boils down to. There's many uses. I think the post office drop-off use is more unique and maybe abnormal than the truck loading, unloading use, quite frankly. And we go back to dealing with that scenario, and we talked quite a bit about it as we developed that project over the years. And I think we arrived at a good approach, but it comes with its pros and cons. And ideally, if one thing were to go away, it would be the post office drop box would go away from the alley, and not the trucks per se. So,
would there be any benefit of moving the mailbox down or to the north farther? Is there any room for that? So then people can go in and then cut through the parking lot?
No, I hear it. And then egress through the parking lot. I think we're up against the property line for the newly established property line with the Country Bank. Yeah, I think a better scenario, and I think I've been about this a little the last few days, is we spoke about, and this is obviously not going to happen tomorrow or this year, but conceivably you could look at 3rd Avenue southeast coming off of Main Street, and that would be a one-way off of Main, similar to the Citizen 1st Avenue south here. And then you could potentially have a drop-off scenario or drop-off lane along 3rd Avenue along the north side, where you'd have basically a dual lane similar to 1st Avenue up here. And maybe it's configured in a manner where there's some protection to that drop-off lane. And this was a configuration that was reviewed, or at least approached a few years ago when we were dealing with Faith Lutheran there, and their plans or their vision and how their site's going to evolve at that point in time before they did the first stage of their project and now into the future. They brought up the possibility of that actually being not really being limited or eliminated, but this might be a way to limit the traffic there, but also, address this need of the post office. And the other thing that's evolved on that front is quite a bit of discussion with the fire chief over the last few months here, and their routing. They're looking at their truck routing where they're moving away from 3rd Avenue. They're going to utilize 2nd Avenue. They're going to push to the east of Block and then utilize Bluff and Adams more instead of coming to Main, on 3rd Avenue per se. So there's some things coming together there in discussions where,
What about parking?
What's that?
What about parking under a scenario like that? Like for land uses right there,
Yeah, you gotta look at the parking we're providing them with the parking lot. You know, the city did purchase that transaction to the north there. I think in the evening hours, where I imagine Landy's majority of their traffic is that parking lot I, newly configured parking lot I is pretty open.
I think that just points to the conversations that would have to be had and Mayor, you're right, and Ken's obviously right too. I mean, that's either the downside of being in downtown is that, you know, the alternative is parking big trucks on Main Street, and I don't think that's a smart alternative, and so alleys. So alleys really do become a loading, unloading. I mean, we have it at almost every alley in our downtown district.
Well, there is a drop box in front too.
Yeah.
Exactly. There's
So those are just, I mean, I think it's, you know, important for the public to realize that that's a major use of the alley is for loading and unloading purposes.
I think the one thing I mentioned the mayor foreseer is that we could install some sort of sign, and we do have a sign, a similar situation in the, I don't know if we'll use the exact sign, but the Main Street Bar and Grill alley area, where there's quite a bit of, some of those businesses utilize that alley quite frequently for loading and unloading, I guess, more than loading per se, but just to denote that that alley will be blocked due to deliveries, truck activity, and the likes, and situate that sign more towards the north, so when that truck is sitting there, and, you know, that'll tell that person that wants to get to that mailbox that this alley does serve another purpose other than simply getting you to the mailbox. And that'll also allow those business owners then to communicate that to people that approach them. You know, sadly, unfortunately, I realize, and I'm sure you guys have heard it too, that some of these people, when they can't get to the mailbox, are approaching business owners in that area.
Okay, thanks, Ken. Matt?
One thing I forgot to mention, this actually got emailed out today from the chamber. I think some of you in this team are familiar with it, but they are doing a workshop for accessibility for businesses. And a lot of this has to do with Highway 15, but that's being scheduled for Thursday, May 22nd at 8 in the morning at the event center. And so they've got some experts in from the State Council on Disability and ADA accessibility certified people, and I know that our building official will be there as well. Just so I'm sure there'll be more news that comes out on that too, but that did come out today. It'll be a good point to at least start noting that now.
Do we have new building people coming online pretty quick?
We hired a new inspector who started this week, and then we'll have our second one starting next week. So we should be fully staffed within the building department.
Kent, one more thing for you, maybe. I had a resident talk to me, well, one that said that the speed sign that is from the bridge going south on School Road, around the curve, there's a speed sign that flashes.
Yeah, it's one in both directions on School Road there.
Yeah.
Part of the project.
Well, since you put that one there, there's one that lives on North School Road up on the curve that would like to have one up there. I don't know, what are those there, what do those run?
They ran, the pair was, yeah, I hate to say, but they run about $2,000 a piece, if I remember correctly. So we can relocate those. They're self-contained, they're mounted on a post, and that's the type of unit we bought. So we're gonna strategically look at areas, and from a public works standpoint, we're gonna, I'll make note of this, obviously, but we're gonna let the chief Hatton and the PD really determine where they feel these should be located. They're more familiar with the speed dynamics out there than anybody. So we situated those last fall, following up on the feedback we received as we developed that project. And like I said, all we need to simply do is pound a new post in a different spot, and those can be relatively easily mobilized.
I would
suggest kind of where Gary was going. I think we could use some more. You know, when I walk down there, they're really effective. I'm surprised because I'll be walking and car comes and it's flashing and the white light comes on and people slow up. And so they work. And there's other places we could use them too.
Yeah, I think I struggle with the return on the investment when they stay in place for longer periods of time. I don't know if they're working right now, but I think it's been relatively proven. And that's why you see the trailers and the lakes, that they lose their effectiveness. So that's, I mean, we could potentially purchase more of them, but I think we want to mobilize them periodically.
Sure, that makes sense.
I think, you know, funny story, and this was years ago when these first started evolving, and I've only seen this once, but I went through a community, it was dark, I think it was winter time, and very small community that had a 35-mile-per-hour zone. It could be debated anyways, but anyways, they had one actually that was red and blue flashers were on top when the thing triggered over your speed. So it really got your attention, and that's the only one I've ever seen of that sort. I don't know if that was homemade or...
Sounds like a custom rig.
Yeah.
That'd be a good one to watch though. But there was a lot of brake lights flying on.
And if you know where the ox yoke is on 92,
Yeah.
that's where it was. Yeah. Well, the trails there, obviously, the trail. That was probably 10 years ago.
Thanks, Kent. The only other thing I have is interest form for the Police Civic Service Commission, and that's Steve Senseline. And I believe he is a worker at 3M. He said now that he's going to be an empty nester, he's going to have time. So we do have a opening, so if nobody objects, we will put him on for serving on that commission.
Steve was president, I think he's going off of the United Way. And
Yep.
so,
That's what he's got on.
and
here.
had a
Yep.
son who was a bicycle patrolman back in the day, so here in Hutch.
Many years ago.
Yeah, you remember that?
Many years.
I don't think.
So,
Alrighty, with that, enjoy our nice spring that we had for, a couple days here, and sounds like Mr. Snowman's gonna come back again, maybe, hopefully not, but Rain Man, so,
Summer's gonna be on a Tuesday this year, so buckle up.
cool. Alright,
and 30 days of biking starts in April 1st, so try to get out. You can look online to sign up for that if you want, and National Bike Challenge starts in May 1st, goes through till September. There are other opportunities to be involved with your friends.
yep. With that, everybody have a safe and happy Easter, and may the Easter Bunny be kind to you. With that, adjournment's in order.
So moved. Motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Motion by Steve, second by Chad. I thought everybody fell asleep there for a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried.